All right, welcome to Advocacy and Hope. My name is Amy Post. I am your host, and I thank you so much for joining us this morning. This is a little bit of a different time frame that we've done things, so I appreciate you tuning in and being flexible with your schedule. But I needed to kind of rearrange the schedule just slightly to be able to bring on my guests today who have an extremely busy schedule. So I appreciate their time and I appreciate yours because, time is very precious. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. This is going to be an extremely special morning. So please don't go anywhere. And if you do have to jump off, you can watch this. It will be recorded and we will have it for you. But this is something that is near and dear to my heart. I know with Advocacy and Hope, we talk about a lot of advocating for yourself, advocating for others, and there is hope through, those challenging gray times that you're having in life. So without further ado, I want to welcome my guests, and I did have Pat Bauer on earlier. So I think if you guys have been following us on Facebook, we did put a link in there if you wanted to see the first interview. We really dive deep into some cool stuff, and it was pretty powerful. So don't miss that one as well. Do go back and watch that one. But I want to introduce Pat Bauer and Natalie. They are with Wildwood Integrative Health, and Pat is an adult nurse practitioner. Natalie is the nurse navigator. Wildwood Integrative Health is in Wildwood, Missouri. It's just right outside of St. Louis. This is an incredibly powerful practice that they have, and I actually was a patient. This is not your traditional Western medicine. If anybody has heard, functional medicine, anything with, functional healing, letting the body heal itself, alternative, holistic, those types of things, this is really where we're diving in. So for anybody that has been tuning in and watching the podcast, you may kind of know my story. It does go back almost 10 years now in August with my daughter when she was diagnosed at age 3 with malignant liver cancer and then a rare genetic cancer gene. We have had 10 years to really prepare, but through all of that, I didn't give myself any self-care at all. We were in and out of the hospital. We lived in the hospital for a month at a time, and we were very sick all of the time, very, very sick. I then was diagnosed with some really bad, just sinus infections, respiratory infections. I was on antibiotics, steroids, codeine for probably 2 years. And I didn't realize that my physicians were doing anything wrong. I do realize a little bit more now, but I should have been digging a little deeper. So I became immune to many of the most potent antibiotics on the market. And when I finally got to an ENT, he suggested 2 surgeries. So I had 2 sinus surgeries. I then had black fungus mold coming out of my sinuses. It was the size of a quarter. I was deathly sick. I could barely get out of bed. He suggested another surgery. So I did another surgery, and I got a staph infection in the hospital. And that went through the sinuses, it went through the bloodstream, and I was even more sick. 2 ENTs wrote me off. An infectious disease doctor here in St. Louis completely wrote me off and said, we can put you in the hospital, we'll put a PICC line in, and we will, just pump you full of antibiotics, even though you are, resistant to 12 of the strongest. We're going to see what we can do for you. And at that moment, I had a really big decision. And I don't believe in coincidences. You guys have probably heard me say this. Everything in life happens for a reason, and you really need to pay attention to your gut and your instincts. You need to take a step back in silence and really look at the other sides of everything. My husband came home and said, I was introduced from a friend, I think it was maybe one of our chiropractors, to a woman. Her name is Pat Bauer, and she's at Wildwood Integrative Health. She does some different ozone treatments and things that I feel might help you. I had a really big decision, and I remember contemplating for only a couple of minutes, and I was terrified. And I reached out to Pat. Pat gave me probably more time than I have ever been given in my life, really digging deep into what was happening, asking about the situation. and then offering different suggestions. She got me in immediately. And I honestly believe that the only reason I'm here today is because of Pat and what she offers, but it was also because of my open mind and walking into that facility and Pat giving me her unconditional attention that morning to really dive deep and figure out what I had been through and figure out a plan and give me some options. So for anybody out there listening today, or if you have a friend or family member, if they're dealing with certain things, have them tune in or have them watch this, because I'm not kidding you. Today's episode is going to change your life in ways that you didn't realize. And I think that it will hopefully make you a little more comfortable to something that you could be a little uncertain about. So without further ado, I really want Pat, Natalie, you guys to just tell us a little bit more about Wildwood Integrative Health. What do you do and what is it all about and who comes to see you?
Okay. Well, thank you for having us both on, and we both just enjoy our jobs. It almost isn't a job, it's a calling. And the people that come into the practice are open-minded. We meet so many people with big hearts, and so I go home at the end of the day. While I'm physically tired, I'm mentally challenged, and I think about things, and I know we're all connecting here on a energetic, spiritual level, and that's what we're here for, is to help people. They come to us because they're physically hurting. They may have a diagnosis, they may not, but they have a set of symptoms. And what I've built a practice on is getting to the bottom of the symptoms. And as a nurse practitioner owning my own clinic, I was kind of out there on my own for a long time. And when you're out in the desert by yourself, you rely a lot on books, on research on the internet, and then you do have to go inside and figure out what feels good for this person or that person. And so I've honed my skills that way. And I want everyone to know we all have that ability to look at what feels good for me. And I ended up inadvertently taking care of a lot of people who have cancer diagnosis. And then secondly, people who had chronic infections, and you fell into that. And I had the good fortune of being trained by a doctor who had just come back from learning about ozone, and he introduced me. He's just a kind gentleman, and he said, "Here, try this." And I'm thinking, what would you put a gas in people's blood for? And how could that be safe? Well, I took the same classes he took. I learned about it, these therapies that involve ozone, which ozone is the world's best antimicrobial. So ozone kills bacteria, viruses, fungus, and parasites. And it can be applied in different ways. And once I learned that, then that became part of my library of how to help people. And so fast forwarding, I'm taking care of quite a few different type of patients. I get more cancer patients who have decided, kind of along the lines of what we're doing here today, they just decided that they did not want to do standard of care for a cancer diagnosis. And when people make that decision, they are, again, out in the wilderness and most likely overwhelmed with information, and they don't know what to do. And so what I do know is so important is to listen to my patients, because they'll tell me what they've done, what they want to do. Sometimes I can even figure out it's not maybe a blockage or something that someone's really fighting with, and then I see that's part of their diagnosis, and I may not be able to help them, but I can work on their symptoms, and then they work through those issues, and people get better. So I see some really miraculous healings. I'm just the cheerleader. The healing comes between the person and God. And I know where to put ozone or how to treat this or what supplement to take. And one of the people that I met, oh, probably 5 to 6 years ago was Natalie Hayes. She was my patient. And I'm going to let her tell her story here in a minute. But she came with an open mind. And she had a diagnosis of breast cancer. And she has beat breast cancer twice. And she's a true wealth of knowledge. And she helps our patients realize how powerful they are. So with that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Natalie and let her tell you her story, and then we'll talk.
All right, thank you. And first of all, I obviously I'm working with Pat. I'm her nurse navigator, but one of the reasons that I have continued my personal journey there, and then now I'm working there, is just because it's very hard to find a practitioner that listens. And so many times you may have blood work and it's like, but it looks great. And then you say, but I don't feel good. I don't feel great. And so I think that, in any medical journey that you're on, it's very difficult, unfortunately, a lot of times to find a practitioner that will listen to you based on your symptoms, listen to you based on, what it is that you're feeling that you want to do in your journey. So that's kind of where I met Pat and how I ended up meeting her. Breast cancer runs in my family. Both my grandmother and my mother have had breast cancer. And, I felt like one day that might eventually happen. And so it did in 2019. And in 2019, of course, I was scared. I'm a mom. I have 3 children. I'm married. And, it was a very inconvenient time for this to happen. And, was just trying to navigate what to do. Many times in the system, you are diagnosed and then you're immediately rushed into, let's have surgery, let's do reconstruction. Everybody kind of gets run of the mill. And I didn't want run of the mill care. I was more frustrated, I think, than anything of, I feel like I'm in good health. I take care of myself well. I can't believe I'm in this position. And so I really dug deep to try to find a different way. And so I started asking people, talking to people, and I had a couple of different people that introduced me to, Pat, and you got to go to her. She knows everything there is about cancer. I mean, I would call up complete strangers and say, hey, I heard you went to Pat Bauer. Tell me about it, because I kept thinking, why is it that she knows so much? And so my first moment of meeting Pat was where I felt the most at peace. And I really feel like in my personal journey, as well as when I'm talking with patients, that's really what I encourage them is find a path that gives you peace. Because if everyone else is telling you to do this and it just doesn't sit right with you, you're almost finding it the whole time. You need to find something that really resonates with you. And so during my first, experience with cancer, it was only stage 1, and immediately the doctors were, we're going to do a double mastectomy because your family history. Mind you, I'm negative for BRCA, negative for every genetic cancer gene possible that we know of at this time, but it was still very extreme. And so that was the recommendation, was double mastectomy and chemo. And the chemo recommendation had a lot of side effects that would have most likely, impacted me based on some of my history. And so none of that seemed like a good option. And so I had met with Pat and just kind of briefly talked about, it was still a very conventional type of nurse. And so I went ahead and did a lumpectomy, actually did a laser lumpectomy, which is not your traditional type of lumpectomy. Had that done in New York City in February of 2020, 3 weeks before the world shut down for COVID. So the mere fact that I got on a plane, was able to fly there, get home, was pretty miraculous in itself. So at that point in time, I did, a few holistic things, but just thought, oh, it's going to be gone. And then it came back in 2022. And that's when I really was like, okay, this is not just removing, there's got to be something else. There's got to be a reason why it keeps coming back. And so that's where I really got serious, started seeing Pat more. I even had gone to another clinic in another state and said, I want to get to the root cause. There's got to be a reason of why, my body is not fighting off cancer. And so it has been very intense, but, that was what we committed to, what I committed to. And Pat had said too, just give this 6 months of, going all in. And I went all in for 6 months. And that month, golly, I think we were still in the middle of treatment. I think I was still within my end of my 6 months. I got my repeat scan and the cancer was gone. And I had never had any surgery. I did nothing but, full force. I did high dose vitamin C infusions twice a week. I did ozone infusions. Found out that I had high levels of mold. Sometimes I did nasal ozone. So just did that and supported my body with supplements and areas to kind of fill the gaps. And I did a lot of resting, learned to sleep better, learned to not take on everyone else's stress, things like that. But through this whole process, being a patient in this clinic has been different. You walk in and there's hope. You walk in and it doesn't feel doom and gloom. It doesn't feel stressful, or, you walk in and you kind of feel at peace there. And a lot of that is because of who Pat is. And I joke with her and I give her trouble a lot because she doesn't want to always come towards the days of doing things with technology. But because of that, she gives her patients 100%, attention. She has told me time and time again, I'm not taking a computer in that room. I'm going to look at them in the eye. And it is a lost art. We don't get that kind of treatment anymore. And so I commend her for that, because as being a patient, I want that attention too. I want someone who's listening to me, looking at me. I don't know if they're looking at an email, if they're actually listening to what I'm saying. And so that is one of the things that I love the most about, her and her approach to treatment, is that it's always 100% focusing on you, listening to you. She may suggest something and you may really push back, and she may say, you know what? Okay, this is not the right direction for this patient, because the patient's only going to be successful if they're willing to do the treatment. So she has such a gift for that. And I'm just so blessed to be a part of this team with her.
Wow. So that was heavy. And one of the things that I wanted to mention, I mean, there's so many things that jump out, but for my situation, and I think for many others, I mean, I spent years in the hospital with my daughter, and it was doom and gloom. It was the valley of death. And for anybody that has, had a good experience, I'm not downplaying that. And if you got better in the hospital, I'm not downplaying any of that. Our situation was just a little bit different. And I think walking into Pat's office, it was one of the reasons why I then felt like moving forward, was because people were smiling. They were happy. They looked as though they were getting better. They looked healthy. And so at first I felt, oh my gosh, I feel horrible. I don't know if I look horrible, but yet there's just this aura in this office that feels like I want to be a part of this. I think I'm actually where I need to be. So that was huge. And I'm so appreciative that you mentioned that, because for anybody listening out there that has a situation right now that they're contemplating today what to do, knowing all your options, I think, is really important. And as you said, find your own path, find what resonates with you. That is really, really important. I have never, even in my book, I do not state any kind of medical advice. I just know what I've been through and what's been really, really transforming. So, Natalie, I appreciate those words, and I think the audience will appreciate your vulnerability of your story, because that's one of the things that I've tried so hard in writing my book, is to tell your story and to be honest and be open and have people come out of the woodwork and really talk about other things. But this is a very touchy subject for those that, they're just really not sure about it. It's not these little buzzwords that drive me crazy. Well, Amy, it's not FDA approved. And I could just strangle one more doctor if they say that to me. And I'm sure I almost have. And so I'm not a very good patient when it comes to Western medicine. I'm a much better patient for Pat. Um, but I do really love that people can choose their own path. Everybody has control of their body. You don't feel like it when you're in the hospital. And that's why I advocated for myself and my daughter so very much every step of the way. You have to advocate. And man, there's so many different directions we can go. But another big pillar that you mentioned, and anybody again that's listening out there, we all want to be heard. We all want to be seen and heard. And we aren't given options. We don't feel as though we are important. I am sure you hear it every single day. But I think we're just begging for that focus and for someone to really listen to us. So I think that's part of, it's just part of Pat's personality. And I love that that's what you found out, because that's what everybody that, I have spoken with or sent to Pat, and even my experience was. So I think that's huge. I think that also people need to pay attention to self-care, being able to give yourself rest and have good sleep, changing your diet, being able to get outside, get fresh air every day, change your mind frame, possibly change the people that you're around, gather a new little tribe of those that'll, really kind of uplift you and keep you in that positive mood, and having that gratitude, I think, is huge. But I love that you mentioned, the vitamin C infusions, the ozone infusions. If either of you will just dig a little deeper for anybody out there that maybe has heard of ozone or absolutely has never heard of ozone, what is it?
Okay. Ozone is a form of highly absorbable oxygen. So oxygen is O2, and it's stable as O2. When oxygen is run across a current, it uncouples O2 and it temporarily becomes O3, which is ozone. And in and of itself, if you breathed ozone, you would cough. It would cause your lungs to close. You would have a severe reaction. But if you put that ozone in the body strategically, and you have to do it right, it will upregulate the immune system. It'll kill pathogens. It'll help your body heal. It's very much like we could call it, it's oxygenating your tissues. And for people who have chronic infections or cancer, that cancer loves an anaerobic environment, an environment of no oxygen. And how does that happen in the body? That happens most likely because, sometimes you have the genetic predisposition to cancer.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have all the external environmental stressors that weaken your immune system. And sometimes you just have a weak immune system. And so when your immune system isn't doing its job, and you're in an anaerobic state, maybe you don't exercise, maybe you don't eat good food, maybe you don't sleep well, just all those things you just mentioned, that all builds on itself, and it causes your body to not function the way it was meant to. And so ozone is, again, oxygenates tissue. And then I always tell people, I don't do the healing. It's your body that does it. And your connection to the divine that allows you to heal. And I'm not saying, there are plenty of times I see absolutely beautiful people go to heaven, go to the next stage from cancer, and I watch them go through it, and I watch their family. It's so sad, but the interesting part of my job and the fulfilling part is that I see these families come together, and I see people really grow and work through life. And when they leave, they're surrounded by love. They're with They're with their tribe, like you said, and it in a strange way, it's heartwarming for me. I know, when people pass, it's painful because we have to unravel from that person that that we're attached to. But when I see people look at their whole being and look at making their bodies inhospitable to cancer or inhospitable to this chronic infection, and then they get better, and then like someone like you, Amy, and you, Natalie, you took this by the bull by the horns and said, I'm not going the route that everyone tells me to. I'm going to go my way.
Mhm.
And then we figure out what your way is. It's beautiful. I see people get better, and it's so fun for me.
Yeah.
And I think my personal situation too, I feel like I tried the conventional route. I didn't go extreme, but I did do the lesser recommendation. And it still came back. And I have watched, my mom has gone through cancer 3 times. And so part of my personal mission was I don't want to live feeling like every time it's time to get a scan, or every time I feel something weird in my body, that I'm thinking it's back, it's back. And I know it's something I'll have to work on, the rest of my life, but working towards finding out how to make my body's environment and my immune system more able to fight and to have, a strong immune system so that it can do what it's designed to do. We all have cancer cells in our body, but we all don't just walk around with, active cancer all the time. So it's giving your body a chance to fight and do what it's designed to do. And so using these more natural modalities allows for your body to do that. And you don't feel miserable in the process. Again, I'm a mom. I have 3 really, really busy kids, and I'm constantly running them around all the time. I wanted to be able to continue to do that and be active. I love to be active and do things. And never once through my treatments, there would be some days I would be tired, but I never was, sick and throwing up. And it was what worked for me and what I wanted to feel like I had control over my treatment. And so part of that is finding, again, your journey that works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want everyone that's listening to understand that the conventional route does not strengthen the immune system. It does not decrease inflammation in the body. Pat knows this. We work with Dr. Scott Huff here in St. Louis also, and that has been that combined, getting our body really in alignment, making sure that we're looking at gut health, making sure that we are decreasing, the inflammation in the body and strengthening that immune system. And I think maybe what people forget about, or perhaps they don't realize now, if they read the product information on those products, they're going to understand what those drugs do. And I know we all want the best for the decision that we have made, and so I'm not downplaying anybody's decision. I just know that I see, and you guys probably see, so much cancer every single day. Ever since I wrote the book, and launched it in May, and then launched the podcast last fall, and launched a community for women, for Advocacy and Hope. And now I've launched a young adults for Advocacy and Hope. I have people coming out of the woodwork, more than I can even actually respond to them. My husband has cancer, my, whomever. It's absolutely terrifying. And the one thing that I want to do is I just want to wrap my arms around all of them. And I have, referred all of them to Pat, especially if they're local, or even if they need a phone call or something, to be able to just get some other options. But I think when it comes to, the drug care system that we're in, and I'm 100%, it's not healthcare, it's drug care. And we really need to be very aware of what those drugs do to our body. One of the main things that I pushed back with the system with Children's here in St. Louis was because all of the drugs that my daughter was on, and such a young age, and every one of them, when I did all my digging, and of course, they told me that the drugs had no negative effects, no contraindications, and that was laughable. We had a big meeting with the heads of all the departments at Children's back about 9 years ago. And so we finally came to the agreement that they do have lots and lots of contraindications and a lot of effects. And I think just realizing that this is your own body healing itself. This is a way, and I think my understanding and how I really simplified it to myself in the ozone was that the ozone, it kills those bad cells and leaves those good cells. If anybody has been through chemotherapy or watched someone go through chemotherapy, it kills their entire body. It kills everything. It kills all the good. It kills the bad. I never want to watch anybody else in my household go through cancer or chemotherapy. And I think that once you go through it, you've seen the horrors that it can offer. And walking into Pat's office and seeing people get better and smiling and not literally just fearing for their life is something that we all need to pay attention to. And I think that this podcast is really important, and these topics are extremely important. So I love being able to really kind of dive into that, but I do have a couple of questions. So I've had messages sent in. There's some messages saying, yeah, but my situation is really bad. I just don't think that it's something that these treatments can fix. Or we had another one that said, I asked my physician about it, and they told me absolutely do not do anything like that. Don't do anything that's not FDA approved. We went through that same bullying. I am not, this is not my first rodeo when it comes to being bullied by those physicians. And I'm not being mean. They're not bullies in the fashion that they want to intentionally hurt you. It's just, they don't open their minds. And I wish that more of them would. I think, Pat, you and I had that conversation when I first came to see you, that we wished that these worlds would merge.
Right. And that's my prayer is I give all the credit to allopathic medicine for their diagnostic capabilities, for their emergency capabilities. I mean, these people they do miraculous things. And I think all the people who go into medicine, they go in for the right reasons. They're educated in a certain way, and they're bombarded with so much information. And these people are smart. They got it. And so when they have to learn, or when they are learning, they have to memorize. And when they memorize, it's rare that they're thinking. And I don't say that as an insult. I say that knowing that's how I learned things. And now I realize after 10 years of doing this work that you have to be able to connect with, you have to connect with the patient, and B, you have to connect with a knowing from my experience. Oh, this person has breast cancer, or this person has pancreatic cancer. And, medicine will tell them you're going to die in 3 months, or go home and get your affairs in order, and we'll put you on palliative care or hospice. And the people who have an open mind and say, it's not my time yet, then they'll look at the big picture and say, okay, I want to help myself feel good. And they don't put a date on it. They don't say, oh, okay, well, I want to live 4 months instead of what they told me 3. They want to feel good. And so when people look at or have that mindset, then they're open-minded. And it's not that they hate their doctors. They aren't bad people. They're educated in a certain way, and they can't jump out of the system. Now, good news, since COVID, there are a lot of MDs and DOs and RNs and NPs who have figured out that there's a component to our healthcare that is disease care, and they fill that with drugs. And there are some really good drugs. Ivermectin is a good drug. Hydroxychloroquine is a good drug. Methylene blue is a good drug. Um, and to throw the baby out with the bathwater would be foolish of me. But to look at the whole system and say, maybe we ought to focus on the patient and A, what their diagnosis is, and B, how do they want to be treated? So my goal is that we work together someday, and I don't know everything. I certainly don't. It's a thrill to stand shoulder to shoulder with Natalie. She has different experiences than me. My other nurse, Christine, I have a hyperbaric clinic. I have Barb, and she's my hyperbaric nurse, and I have Michelle. These people all have different experiences, and they all came out of standard medicine, but they have an open mind, and so it's fun. And I just let them go. You know, I rarely have to rein them in because these gals are thinking, they know, and you know. And then I've got Lisa at the front desk. She'll pick up on things that I miss, and she runs the office. But I'll be like, how did she know that? But she does. And we all have those abilities to put two and two together. I also have a medical assistant. She's working in the front office too, Jennifer. She's very intuitive. And I think, you know what? We've just been told brain is to be number one. And it's really a combination between our heart and our mind. And if we can all find it, I mean, it's scary as all get out. But once you find it, if you're in the flow and you come into Wildwood Integrative Healthcare, and people have found it, and they're sitting next to people with really bad diagnosis, but they aren't buying it. They're making the changes, and Natalie did that. Natalie did go to other clinics, and you know what? I enjoyed it because she came to me and she said, "Look what this person said." And so it helped me help her. And if we all, as healthcare providers, would do that, we'd fast forward healing, and, you know, people would get to do what God put them here to do, which is enjoy life and help others. And that's where we are, and we love it. And it's a small clinic. It's not big. It's small. So I take care of my patients, and I know them. Natalie knows the patients, and we really do go home happy because we help people.
And patients are with each other. I mean, even me as a patient sitting in that chair for 6 months, you know, the other patients became part of my support system. We knew every day, how are you feeling today? What's going on, you know, with your grandkids? And I have been in many infusion clinics before, and it is not a place of, I keep saying peace, but that's just what it is. It's not a place of peace or hope. You usually walk in there, it's doom and gloom, and people look sick. You walk into Wildwood Integrative Healthcare, and people don't look sick. They're vibrant. Their color's good. We just saw a patient yesterday, and we're like, can you believe her and what she's gone through? And she's just walking into our clinic and looking so healthy. And so it's a different feel. But, you know, I'd like to say one other thing too, is part of why I chose getting treatment at Pat's office is because she wasn't so far out there that it was too hokey. You know, I'm traditionally trained, and yes, I had done a lot of reading, and I was, you know, more in the holistic path, but I wanted to have somebody who also was not afraid to say, you know what, we need to use some traditional care too, or maybe you need to have surgery, or maybe you do need to do some low dose chemo. I wanted someone who was able to not think that it was only their way. And that's where Pat does a really good job with, again, listening to the patient, but on all of our paperwork, it says we're happy to work with your other healthcare providers, because if everybody can work together, we can make patients feel better. We can make patients heal and live their life. And so you'll see that in our clinics, sometimes we do have patients that are that are also getting chemo, but they're coming to us to decrease the side effects of chemo or their side effects of radiation. And so again, with Pat's clinic having an open mind to just be another part of the puzzle in your picture of health is important, because a lot of doctors are, it has to be my way, my treatment, or you will not be a patient in this clinic. And that is definitely not what you experience at our clinic.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting because, we as adults, we can advocate for ourselves, but when it comes to like somebody my daughter's age who is under 18, it's a very different picture. And I'll only touch on this briefly, but I really want, the audience to pay attention to if they've ever walked into their physician's office and asked about something else, and if they've been, given, I don't know, or closed down immediately. That's the norm. I mean, you will very rarely find the physicians that will be open-minded, because like I said, we were shut down immediately when we talked about even anything such as supplements. We were told we were not allowed. It was prohibited for our daughter to take anything else than the drugs that they were giving and all of the treatments. And I've been in the medical sales for about 20 years, and I have seen hundreds, if not thousands of nurses coming out of the system since 2020. And they are not afraid now to tell their story. They are not afraid to tell what is actually happening in those hospitals. And they may not be able to make the money right now that they were making in the hospital, but they are honestly knowing they'll have a better quality of life getting out of the hospital. And I'm not beating up on the hospitals, but I want people to be very, very aware that this is the system. It is a drug care system, and they're not going to offer you a lot of, better diet, better exercise, exit strategies on your drugs. I mean, I've had to push this for 10 years of an exit strategy. I remember being in the offices, I think it was in our genetic physician's office, and the residents, when I asked about an exit strategy off the drugs, they looked at me like I was speaking in Japanese. Like they had absolutely no idea. They'd never heard that ever before. Like, why would you want to come off your drugs? You have the right to advocate for yourself, push back, ask questions, do anything that you want. Now, you do have to be careful in medical neglect states and things that, you are dealing with of those that are under 18. But I do think it's something people need to be aware of. When we were in the hospital, and I think anybody that's been there, your mind can go to some really bad places. Very sad. It is, white walls. There is nothing pretty in the hospital. There is nothing, it's a really scary place to be. And I think walking into Pat's office, you will know the moment you walk in from Lisa at the front desk having the biggest smile in the world and greeting you and asking you how you are. And it's just a lovely feeling from the moment that you walk in. So I love that we've touched on that. I do want to also, if one of you would kind of talk a little bit more about the hyperbaric chamber. I mean, it's been those buzzwords for a while, different things that people are trying, but what are you seeing? Why did you get the hyperbaric chamber? What does it do? And then kind of what are the results that you're seeing?
Sure. Hyperbaric chambers are chambers that put oxygen under pressure. And I have two chambers that are the hard-sided. They're acrylic tubes. The patient's on a gurney. They're pushed into the chamber. Then doors closed, and the hyperbaric nurse is right by their side their entire treatment. And basically what's happening is the chamber is pressurized with 100% oxygen, which the person's breathing in and also taking some of it in through their skin. And it's, again, oxygenating their tissues. And we use it, well, let me back up. The chambers that we have are the same chambers that are available in hospitals. And there's also soft-sided chambers. And soft-sided chambers have their place. They I've heard and seen some really great outcomes with soft-sided, and probably to get a little geeky on you, we live at 1 atmosphere of pressure, 1 ATA. And when you get in a soft-sided chamber, it is pressurized with room air, and it can go up to 1.3 atmospheres of pressure. So in our atmosphere, there's 21% oxygen. So as you and I sit and breathe right now, we're breathing in 21% oxygen and living life, respiring, our muscles are working, we're digesting, we can see all those things, our hair's growing on 21% oxygen. Well, when we put people in a hyperbaric chamber, it's 100% oxygen, and the blood gets saturated with oxygen, but then also the red blood cells get saturated with oxygen, and then the plasma, the other part of the blood, gets saturated, and it's circulating throughout the whole body and causing, our bodies know what to do. Is when the inflammation goes away, health comes back. So when someone has a non-healing wound, and you super oxygenate them, the wound can heal. It's not that the oxygen's doing the healing from you're breathing it every day. It's that now you're getting an increased concentration that the body's picking up, and the body knows what to do with it. So I had a soft-sided chamber for several years. It worked, but I had read so much about high-dose vitamin C and hyperbaric oxygen paired together for cancer care. And these are studies by I was going to say they're studies, individual studies by doctors, but then there's some studies by universities and schools, and everything points to the fact that when the body's properly oxygenated, it heals. And so one of the most recent patients we just had, the patient had a wound, her toes were removed, and she had a non-healing wound, and the hospital would not put her in the hyperbaric chamber that they had because insurance would not cover it. And so she and her daughter did research and looked around, and someone at the hospital that they were at said, well, I heard that somebody in Wildwood that has some chambers, you might want to look into that. So this woman, she's in her 70s, she had an open mind. She came in and she had an open mind. She was with a family member, and she said, yeah, this is what I want to do because I've been dealing with this non-healing wound for 6 months. And so I got her in the hyperbaric, and we debrided the wound. After she gets out of the hyperbaric, we put her foot in a bag of ozone, and you should see this wound. It was nasty. It looked terrible. I felt so bad for her. She's on her third or fourth hyperbaric, followed by a bag of ozone over the foot at the end of the session. This wound is healing super fast, and it's why hospitals can't do this. I mean, I do have another story on hyperbaric. Hospitals bill $3,700 an hour for a hyperbaric session. Now, they only get paid by insurance or Medicare about $1,200 an hour. I charge $250 an hour. It's like, why in the heck are these people doing this to our community, wherever it is, whatever state, whatever city? Why are they withholding care? But I could get on a high horse and get really ugly, but why in the heck aren't we working together? And the reason I go into this is to help people. And it is beyond amazing how the system isn't about the people, the patient. It's about keeping itself going. And I worked in a hospital. I wasn't clinical at that time, but I worked in a hospital, and I could see It was about the diagnosis. It was about the reimbursement. It was about the contracts that the insurance companies had with the hospital. You know, this really chapped me. Listen to this. If you go to the hospital and they say you need a CBC, a complete blood count, it's going to get billed to your insurance company for $150, $200, $19, and it's going to get paid by your insurance company. I'm sorry, the hospital's going to bill for this $150, let's say, and then your insurance company is going to pay maybe $59, $60. You know, you can come here and get it for anywhere between, depending on the type of CBC, anywhere between $6 and $12. Now, something's wrong with that. That is just a travesty. Is it to support a big behemoth of the system and to heck with the patient? I mean, I get cramped, but you know, to me, I have people divinely in my presence. I take care of them, and that's where I need to be. Because if I think about the travesty, I can get really hot. Mm-hmm. I'm going to come away from it.
I think it's a good point, though, to bring up, Pat, because I know even just with my journey, I thought I can't go get care somewhere that, you know, doesn't take typical insurance, or your insurance won't pay for alternative care. And so I thought, I can't go do this. I mean, you know, I don't just have a money tree that I can pull from, but finding a practice that is not in it to make money and is in it to actually help you heal is also very crucial. I've been to numerous practices, you know, opinions, and you can tell the ones that you walk into and they're trying to sell you a package or get this group of supplements, and it's never that way. It's always you know, only targeted to what you actually need. And it's always very affordable.
Yeah. And I don't know, Pat, if I had told you this. I mean, I'm usually one that I don't put up with anything. I remember calling my insurance company, and the sinus surgeries that I had done, and this is about insurance, guys. So anybody that's like, where's she going with this? Each sinus surgery was about $30,000. And then, of course, they billed on top of that for all kinds of things. They pushed back and would not pay for the steroid packs that the physician put into the sinus areas. And he said nothing else would have gotten rid of all of that fungus. And so the insurance is always going to push back. It took me quite a while to do that, to push back and finally get them to pay for everything. And then I got the staph infection. And I called the insurance. I asked for management, and I remember the individual saying, "You do know that the ozone or all this, you do know that this is out of network." And I remember saying, "Why does it matter if it's in network or out of network? Don't you, as an insurance company, want me to get better, or do you want me to continue to rack up thousands and thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars? Because we've already racked up $1 million with my daughter. How does that feel?" They got another manager on the phone, and he said, "How much is your bill?" And I said, "My bill is, you know, I think it was like $3,200 for you, Pat, or maybe $3,000. We'd had vitamin C infusions. We'd had the ozone treatments. I think I saw you for 6 months. And then we tested 3 times and I was negative. And I remember giving the insurance company all the information. And I said, "Negotiate with me. I'll go and I will rack up hundreds of thousands, if not another million, or you can pay this bill for about $3,000. And they wrote me a check for the $3,000. So I'm not telling people that it can always be done, but advocate for yourself and quickly make a phone call and tell them that you're smarter than they think that you are, and that you'd really like to negotiate and help them out. Have them really feel how much that hurts. If everybody would just do something different and get better, we wouldn't have all these charges." And I actually found somebody smart within that department that I was calling that actually knew, that sounds like a really good idea. We will do that. And they paid for every single thing that I did with you, Pat. Everything. They never pushed back, not once.
Wow. Well, and having a clinic like mine, it's out. I have no contracts with any insurance companies. I'm outside the Medicare system. I do provide a paid bill that has a diagnosis code on. It's an easy way for people to look up and say, oh yeah, she had fatigue or symptoms of menopause, or, you know, it's a code. Realize those belong to the AMA, but it's a code to say, well, this woman is perimenopausal, or, you know, that is set upper respiratory. But that'll be on there, and patients are able to take that and fill out a claim form with their insurance company. And I would say a third of the people get those initial visits covered, you know, either as we'd call it as a they'd get it covered with their deductible, you know, go toward their deductible, or they would get a reimbursement. But I have to operate outside. In my program is a cash program, so you pay for everything before you leave. But I really try to keep it affordable. And I wanted to put a plug in for our community here in St. Louis. There are a lot of functional medical providers that are really good souls, and they're really trying, and they do their own version of cancer care or chronic infection care. So I don't want people to think they're not out there and I'm the only one, because I'm not. And I stand on the shoulders of giants. I'm just a voracious reader and researcher. And so I'm able to synthesize things for my patients. But there's other people out there that will help them. And if you're from another part of the country, look and investigate. I always tell people, don't you feel one bit bad using the internet to gather information. Just understand that 50% of it's garbage, 25% of it is something that you want, that they want to sell you something, and the other 25% is good information. And the hard part is you have to figure out what's what. So you're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to get a diagnosis. It's going to look like a freight train coming at you, and you don't know what to do. But if you just take a deep breath and do your research and have your loved ones help you, you will figure out, you know, what feels good for you, and then find a caregiver find a practitioner that thinks like you and that you feel good with, and you'll be amazed. They're out there. Some of them don't want to be loud. You know, I was quiet. I didn't say much for the first 8 years because I didn't know who was going to get mad at me or shut me down. And I realize now that with COVID, everybody knows there's some goofy stuff going on. And all I need to do is present to my patients and give them what they ask for. You know, they want to be out of pain, or they want to feel better, or like Natalie, I've got a life to live. And, you know, we work together. And you said, I got pushed up against this wall and nobody's helping me. Well, you had to keep that mind open, keep doing your research. Your husband, he put 2 and 2 together, presented it, and here you are to live your life without, you know, having endured, you know, multiple rounds of antibiotics that put you behind and tore up your gut and all that. You just really kept yourself well. And that's what I want people to understand. They can do that for themselves.
Yeah, they can. And I want to tell the audience, I have not, since I saw you, Pat, I vowed that I would never be on antibiotics ever again, especially what the physicians did. I'm not an overly smart individual, but I know that I'm not going to keep going back to those same doctors that did not have a care for me at all, just pumped me full of drugs, just wrote scripts, could have cared less. And then when I came to them with what they had done to me, there was no responsibility taken. And for me, that is not okay. That is not okay at all in my book. And I vowed that I would never be on antibiotics again. And I would always make sure that I did the ozone treatment, vitamin C infusions, changed, our diet. Of course, we had to for our daughter. We, rid our house of toxins. I mean, we really did a lot of things, of course, working with Dr. Huff as well, and just keeping our bodies extremely healthy, decreasing that inflammation and, increasing the immune system. But I have not been on antibiotics. I guess it's been 5 years since I saw you first. Never been on antibiotics again. And I will tell you, I was pretty darn sick a couple of times with some sinus infections. But now I get one little sinus infection, and it doesn't even turn into an infection actually now, where remember, I was sick for about 8 to 10 months out of the year, and it was getting worse and worse. And I mean, I was resistant. I was immune to every antibiotic on the market. Mm-hmm. And if that doesn't scare somebody, it should, because it scared me, because I was put in that predicament by those doctors. And then I get heated when I talk about it, because it is not okay what is happening to so many people out there. And I think that we really need to pull together and make people more aware of what you do. And that, like you said, you can Google it. You can find lots of places. I had a friend several months ago that was diagnosed with cancer. He's in Florida. And I Googled ozone treatments. Oh my goodness, I must have found 100. I was just giddy. I was so excited. I'm like, thankfully, people are waking up and realizing there are other alternatives and other options. I don't want to keep you guys too much longer. I know we've gone a little over an hour. I think we could probably talk all day about these kinds of things, but I really want people to either reach out to you, reach out to somebody in their community if they need a second opinion. What would you tell people for the first step if they're just thinking about it, if they saw this today and they're like, wow, I don't know what I should do, but what would be the first step for them?
Okay, I'll let Natalie give her her information, and then I'll close for you.
Yeah, I think as Pat said many times, take a breath. First of all, it's very scary. It's very doom and gloom, and you automatically, kind of in your mind, you automatically go to the worst place. And so I would say take a breath and then realize you have time. I think that's my favorite thing to tell to people that call me and say, hey, I heard you had cancer. You have time, because many times you get diagnosed. I mean, in my situation, I got diagnosed and the surgeon called the next day to schedule me for surgery. And I was like, I haven't even had time to tell my family. And so I think just remember you have time. Don't ignore it, but take the time that you need to research. We're all very smart individuals, and we all have information at our fingertips that we used to never have before. So, to Pat's, her advice as well, get on the internet, look at, different cancer treatments, and go to as many consults as you need to go to until you find the right place that really feels, at peace with your heart. You feel at peace with the provider, that you feel like is going to actually listen to you. So that's my advice is, take the time, find, the right person to work with, and make sure that your treatment plan feels good to you for your current situation.
Good. I would agree. A little pearl that I'd like everyone to take home and keep it safe is if everyone got their vitamin D level tested and got their vitamin D level to between 70 and 80 consistently, there would be a lot less cancer in the world. There would be a whole lot less chronic or acute infections. And just something that simple. Now, the key with vitamin D is you have to test it. So every 6 months, you can go to cash labs. You don't need to come to me. You don't need to beg your doctor to do it. But every 6 months, get your D level tested and take between 5,000 and 10,000 IUs a day. And when you get to an amount of 70 or 80, then you kind of back off and do that the rest of your life. I read somewhere several months ago that it would cut down on 70% of the cancers.
Mhm.
Like, okay, that's easy. And that doesn't pay, paying probably $75 for a vitamin D test that you buy online. And then you would take vitamin D every day. Some people do weekly, but at least every day. And pretty soon they're going to have blood spot vitamin Ds. And that's when you get your kids. I mean, it's like, it's so simple. It's frightening to the people who've got all this education and they've got their blinders on. You know, what do you mean people can heal themselves? They can. And we see it all the time. And I reiterate what Natalie said, research, find the person that helps you, and don't give up. Do not give up, because it's out there, information's there, and you are here for a reason and here to accomplish. You know, there are people in situations that they have to have this big problem that causes them to peel off the onion of all this heaviness and illness, and then they come out on the other side and say, why didn't I do this, 10 years ago? Well, you weren't ready. And I tell people, they'll say, I want my brother or my daughter to come in and get treatment here. And we'll always ask them, are they ready? Because you have to have an open mind to do what this is, which is being self-directed and understanding that you're pretty darn smart. You may not think you are, because the world's told us, oh, you got to have this degree and blah, blah, blah. Not true. You just have to investigate and have an open mind and heart, and you'll come to what is good for you. So there's hope, and I know there's people out there to help everyone. Just an open mind is the most valuable tool that you have for healing.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'm looking at the comments that are coming through, and we've got some of your fans, your audience that comes to see you there. Shout outs. Yep, they've been taking the vitamin D, increased it to 8,000, previously 5,000. Fingers crossed it's going to be 70 to 80 next time. I mean, it's like Pat said, these are simple things that you can do, but you have to take a step back. I mean, one of the things we did is got an exit strategy with the doctors. They weren't happy about it, but we did. And then really just kind of figuring out which supplements we needed to take, which ones were not helping us. We got intense blood tests done. We got fecal tests done, really figuring out, what works with our body and what doesn't, what foods were good for our body and what wasn't. Because I'll tell you, and I'm sure Pat, you and Natalie, you talk to your patients probably about certain things of, even if you think, avocados are great for me, or pumpkin seeds, or something else that someone told me, and you're like, you eat them and something wasn't right. Not every good food is good for everybody. So not every supplement that you pick up off the shelf is good for everybody. I think coming to Pat or finding somebody you really trust to be able to do those in-depth blood tests as well, or a fecal test. I mean, we've had to do those for our daughter for different reasons, but knowing what you're dealing with and then deciding what to do. But it's hard to go in with a closed mind, because it will never work. And if you don't know what you're dealing with. So I do agree, just having those simple blood tests done regularly and knowing what is working and what isn't, versus throwing tons of stuff up against a wall and hoping that something sticks, because that makes you frustrated, makes you just less involved. And it's not a smart way to do it. I don't have a medical degree. I'm not a nurse, but I do have a degree in grit and determination and never give up and positivity and gratitude. And I've never been happier in my life, and I've never been healthier in my life. And I did all of these things and rid my life of so many things, but I absolutely love it. I love the comments that are coming through. I think really people need to just reach out and see what they can do. But like you said too, don't wait. They can start with little things first. But I think finding out what your blood work looks like is the first step to then kind of figuring out what's going on. But maybe even having the conversation with the two of you of, something does run in my family, or I haven't been sleeping the best, or I'm sorry, but if there's anybody out there that says absolutely nothing is wrong with me, I mean, I would love to come see what you're doing, because I think all of us will admit something is kind of holding us back. And if we can figure out something simple to get us over that wall, it's going to be massive. But you'll want to come and actually spend time in Pat's office, because it's like something you've never experienced. And I couldn't be more happy after living in the hospital for so long to find a network and a community like this. But two, I mean, you guys can go on Facebook. There's probably different groups, maybe functional medicine, maybe alternative. I don't know if you guys suggest that, but I know I've found good things. I'm in a group for hepatoblastoma and FAP, which is what my daughter has. They've been life-changing, just to kind of keep up. If they can't get in your office regularly or as regular as they need, are there other places that they can go for literature and encouragement that you know of?
I think the key is knowing what to search. So you can take your diagnosis and then add natural cures. And again, you're going to see a lot of garbage, but you dig down in the third or fourth page and you're going to find some good information. And then look for what's going on with, do I need to sign? Hold on a sec.
Because I think too, I mean, I don't know if like self-diagnosis, I think we all try to do that, and that's a little confusing. So we're not having people self-diagnose. We just, want people to have, places to kind of go for a little research.
Right. Just don't be afraid to research. And, doctors sometimes will say, oh, don't believe Dr. Google. I want my patients to research, and they'll get smarter for it. So you have a lot more options, but I'm going to have to jump off here. They're lined up out there. And one last thing, because I'm very small, it takes 2 to 3 months to get in to see me. But if you have cancer, you go on a waiting list. And when there's a cancellation, Lisa will call. So don't be put off if now they're saying you can't see me till September. If you get on that list and you have cancer, or there's openings and there's no cancer patient in line, we'll get you in and we'll take care of you. So press on. And I appreciate being on here. I appreciate you, Amy. Natalie, you're awesome to work with. I'm glad you're here. And you all have a wonderful weekend and get outside in the sunshine.
I love it. My cup is filled. Ladies, thank you so much. Thank you to the audience. Again, thank you for being just wonderful and positive, and all the support for Advocacy and Hope. And we'll see you next time.
Okay.
All right. Bye, guys.